Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking another look at Virtua Fighter 2, released in 1994 on the Sega Model 2A arcade hardware. Now, it's been a while since I actually took my original look at Virtua Fighter 2, so I had actually figured that I noticed that all my other Game Nexus arcade videos had like the intros and everything, but this one didn't, since I had made the original Virtua Fighter 2 video before I had started separating the intros and everything, and I figured I might as well try another play at this game, because I have the whole thing hooked up for Virtual On, which was the videos that came right before this. And the funny thing is, after playing this game so much when I had played it for my original arcade video, it was one of those games that ended up getting so hard that you got beaten so many times by the AI, you just kind of had that desire not to play anymore. But just like I had said last time in my other Virtua Fighter 2 arcade video, this is an excellent arcade game. And the unfortunate part about a lot of Sega's 3D fighting games, the original Virtua Fighter game would go along with this, but a lot of the 3D fighting games, they got decent home ports. In fact, some people even go as far as to say that the home ports are better than the arcade versions, but my personal opinion, the only real way to play these Model 2 arcade games is the original version. Sure, the Sega Saturn or any PC versions they might have released at the time are good, but it's just not as good in my personal opinion. And it's one of those things, you'll be sitting there happy with your Sega Saturn version, and unless you've had some decent playtime with the original arcade version, you just don't appreciate how great of a game this was, especially in 1994. And now, to give you the rundown here, I know I probably gave this in my original arcade video that I released years and years ago, but the original Japanese arcade version was November of 1994. The game came to arcades in North America on January of 1995. Then you would have to wait until later that year, December 1st of 95 in Japan, and December 4th of 95 in North America for your Sega Saturn versions. And then, of course, in Europe, they had to wait until January 26th of 1996 to get their Sega Saturn version. And, of course, just like with a lot of the other Sega Saturn fighting games, the big thing you lost is the 3D backgrounds in the game. So everything was just kind of a flat texture effect, instead of being these really nice 3D backgrounds that you get here. And of course, you didn't get that cool passing under the bridge you do in this stage. Now, one of the weirdest versions of Virtua Fighter 2 had to come on the Sega Genesis, which I think I will eventually have to do a video on, just because it's such a weird game. They basically took Virtua Fighter 2 and they completely demade it into a 2D fighting game for the Sega Genesis. Now, what I see here indicates that that was released in 1996 in Europe, and then March 4th of 1997 in North America, but apparently there was no Japanese version. Now, there also was a Windows 95 version of Virtua Fighter 2, which of course, just like the PC version of Virtua Fighter, was based off of the Sega Saturn version, instead of being based off of this very nice Sega Model 2 version, which you figure 3 years later, there was a possibility they probably could have pulled off a good port of what we see here, but it's probably one of those things that by 1997, and plus the PC fighting game market has never really been big, especially at this point, they probably figured it wasn't really worth the effort to port a 3-year-old game in its original arcade glory to personal computers at the time. So on September 5th of 97 in Japan, and September 17th of 97 in North America, you got your Windows 95 version, which, as I said, it was based off of the Sega Saturn version. And then sometime in 97, I don't see an exact date here, that same game got released on PCs in Europe as well. And the last actual port of this game, well, I don't know if it's actually a port or if it's just some kind of emulation, but it's the Sega Ages version released on PlayStation 2 on October 14th of 2004. And they say it right here, Virtua Fighter 2 was converted for PlayStation 2 in 2004 as part of Sega Ages 2500 series in Japan. And for some reason, the Genesis Virtua Fighter 2 made its way on PS2 and PSP and part of the Sega Genesis collection, and on the Virtual Console on the Wii. But of course, that game isn't really anything like this at all. But that's your basic rundown of releases for Virtua Fighter 2. As I've said numerous times, it's an excellent fighting game. But I don't know if I read this last time, but I might as well just do it now. But as far as the development of Virtua Fighter 2, the game took Sega AM2 roughly 12 months to develop. The developers designed 4 new characters, only 2 of which, Lion and Shun, made it into the final game. In 1995 interview, head developer Yu Suzuki said Virtua Fighter 2 was his favorite of all the games he made, elaborating that he was particularly pleased with the way the polygon graphics added a sense of reality to the characters' motions in addition of the counterattacks. At the beginning of 1995, Sega AM2's Sega Saturn division was split into 3 sub-departments, each one charged with porting a different arcade game to Sega Saturn: Virtua Fighter 2, Virtua Cop, and Daytona USA. Due to unexpectedly slow progress in the Daytona USA port, a number of members of the Virtua Fighter 2 team were reassigned to Daytona USA. In March, AM2 Research completed the Sega Graphics Library, a Sega Saturn operating system which made it feasible to create a near arcade perfect port of Virtua Fighter 2 for Saturn, which, as I said, the Sega Saturn version looks nice. The models had to severely be downgraded. The 3D backgrounds had to be completely scrapped. And now one thing you will notice a lot in this gameplay is there are a lot of places that I actually lost a lot, and you'll notice that timer, which is now at 19 minutes, and it wasn't there a little while ago, jumps a lot. But another thing you'll notice here, which is something I had actually made mention in my Virtua Fighter Kids video, I don't know if it has to do with how well you're doing or how quickly you get here, but the actual stage that Jackie's in here is actually different than it was in my first gameplay, which in the first gameplay it was kind of like this like urban area, where here it's like a platform with like mountains and trees around it, like in a sunset type thing. So it's something in the code that kind of does that on both Virtua Fighter Kids and Virtua Fighter 2. But now, as I was saying in the development history, after completing the Daytona USA port in April, the team took a short holiday before beginning work on the Virtua Fighter 2 conversion in earnest, basically putting all their effort into it. In June, AM2 gave the first public demonstration of Saturn Virtua Fighter 2 at the Tokyo Toy Show. To increase confidence in the accuracy of the port, they displayed non-playable demos of characters Lion, Shun, Pai, and Lao running on Sega Saturn hardware at 60 frames per second, the same speed as the arcade version. However, AM2 continued to face problems in create an accurate port for the Sega Saturn due to the high volume of moves in Virtua Fighter 2. Months had to be spent on developing compression techniques in order to fit all of the game's moves onto a single CD. Also, in order to maintain the 60 frames per second, the Sega Saturn version could not use nearly as many polygons as the arcade version, which I had made mention. To make the difference less apparent, the programming team used texture mapping on the characters, taking advantage of the fact the Saturn could map 16 different colors to each polygon, whereas the Model 2 arcade could only map one. In addition, the polygon background objects of the arcade version were replaced with the parallax scrolling playfields with the selective scrolling, like I had mentioned earlier. The AM2 team also used data from Virtua Fighter Remix as a reference for some elements, since that game actually came out before this one. Well, the Sega Saturn version at least. In an interview during development, Keiji Okayasu, I'm probably mispronouncing that, discussed the team's struggles with getting the Sega Saturn version to run at 60 frames per second. If we didn't have to consider the speed, we could do a conversion very quickly, but with so much data, you could only move slowly. With Virtua Fighter 1, we could use the arcade data for each technique with just a few changes, but with 2, there's just too much data, but we have done well, although how is a secret. I think we could have made 2. We couldn't have made 2 if we hadn't made the first conversion, but it's just as tough. We owe a lot to the original SGL-OS, Sega Graphics Library Operating System software. By the end of September, hit detection had been enabled, and now fully playable conversion was displayed at the JAMA show. Taking into account audience reactions at the JAMA show, the team spent 2 months on final adjustment, playtesting, and the addition of Saturn-specific options. Development on the port was completed in November of 1995, and then, as I had mentioned, it was released in December, and then finally January in Europe. But yeah, Virtua Fighter 2 is a great game, and that fight that you just saw with Doral, still, regardless of anything, is one of the strangest fighting game fights I have ever faced, but as you could see, I really had no chance of winning there, just like in my original version. And you'll see somehow I got 6th place, but the thing is, it had been so long since I had played this board, all of the high scores actually had reset, so this was actually going on the original like factory scores, so nothing was all that high, and I was able to get a high score. And the good thing is I kind of realized quickly enough how to smash my initials here, and I was able to do this without really much of a problem. I think the first time I did it, I kind of had a serious problem, but this has been another Game Nexus arcade video, and I shall see you later. Bye.